Hi everyone, Daleks here, and today I'm going to be reviewing the 6th Doctor story, Revelation of the Daleks. Now this is a late 80s Doctor Who story, so it's near the cancellation of the classic series, and it is actually the story that after this there was an 18-month hiatus until Doctor Who came back with Trial of the Time Lord, and it was originally going to be a cancellation and whatnot, but he did manage to keep it going for another couple of years after that until it was finally cancelled in 1989. Now, if anyone doesn't know the story behind the reason for the cancellation, it's mainly because there was all this violent stuff going on and whatnot, like the two doctors and mentions of Davros of quite dark violence, and these BBC executives didn't really like that. And there was also the whole thing that I think Michael Grade didn't really like Doctor Who that much at all, really, and he was quite high up in the BBC, so I think it was BBC One Control or something like that. So yeah, that's what got that going. But this story itself, given that, isn't too bad. It's not as bad as some of the other ones in Colin Baker's first full season as the Doctor. So yeah, I'm gonna jump right into this now. The Daleks do go off a bit towards, after Genesis of Daleks, you've got Davros there, and the Daleks themselves aren't too good. And this story is no exception to that, I don't think. They do get it back in remembrance of the Daleks, but Destiny, Resurrection especially, and this story, Revelation, are quite bad for that. But because, the Daleks don't really get to do much. They're more just there as Davros' servants. They don't even get a good reveal. They just sort of show up randomly partway through part 1. And then they're just there. You do kind of get the prelude to Remembrance of the Daleks with lots of well, not lots of, but just a bit of Dalek fightings. Daleks fighting Daleks. With the Supreme Daleks fighting Davros' Daleks. Now, I'm not sure how the end of this links into Remembrance, but I'll get on to that at another point. So, yeah, now, this story itself has a lot of double acts in it. And there's even one point where Rossini's Squire bus stop says they're like a double act about, I can't remember her name now. It was, I don't know, the woman who was working with Davros and was secretly betraying him, and her secretary. So, yeah, now, Orsini and Bustock are one double act. The other two I just mentioned are another. You've also got Joe Bell and Tescalika. I don't remember her name now. See, it's quite a long and confusing name. No, it's not going to. Then you got the two security guards. I think you can almost count Doctor and Perry as a double act in this, except not as much as the others. There are quite a few, really. Now the DJ and Davros are kind of without a double act, but and the two grave robbers, they're a bit of a double act. Now, because of all these double acts and whatnot, you've got quite a few different stories going on here, and the Doctor and Perry aren't really as important in their story, if I'm honest, in a way, which is kind of good, really, to kind of make, because it means that they're not the centre of attention, which, if they are, every story does get a bit unrealistic. So in this story, I think it works quite a fair bit, because you've got all these different things happening, and whatnot, and I think it does help to keep the interest going in it. And there is also a lot of death in this story, when you think about it. And usually the double acts go out together, just about. So you got the quite a few different deaths. And the only double act that does survive, other than the Doctor and Perry, is the two security guards who later go on to become, what's it called? I think gardeners and whatnot. So yeah, and often sometimes their different stories end not really with the main plot, like the what are they called? The body snatchers just die trying to destroy the incubation, which is kind of going off on its own plot, which finally ends and whatnot. So yeah, I think that's interesting for that. Now, the story itself, there is the kind of like love scene of Jobel and the woman whose name I can't remember, which I mean is quite dull actually, and especially the death where he's just stabbed with a what's it called, a needle. That's quite dark. I remember that. It was quite shocking as a child. And yeah, I think that's quite, things like that are quite interesting. That's probably the darkest it goes in this story. Now, the story itself, now a love story you can kind of do without, but I guess it's not really that bad being there. The story itself, part 1, the Doctor and Perry aren't involved at all, really. And while they are the cliffhanger, they don't really get involved, they're just walking around outside until they finally get involved in part 2, when they don't do that much there either. But yeah, for part 1, it is probably the lesser of the two parts. It's quite boring at times, especially. And I'm not really sure about it, to be honest. Part 2 is where it picks up, though, and it's definitely much more exciting there. So, yeah, I think... And also, another note quickly before I rate it. There's also the thing about, in Remembrance of the Daleks, you finally see the Daleks elevate and whatnot. And start going up the stairs and whatnot. But here you also see a similar thing to that. Apparently there was another planned scene which never really happened. But in this there's a scene where you see Davros floating. And I don't know why, but I just don't like it. I don't see why Davros had to float. There was no reason for it. It was never really said in story as to why. He was just randomly floating and firing an electric beam at Orsini. And also the way it's done, because of you can almost see through Davros' chair at points in it. And to be honest, I don't like it that much. I prefer it in Remembrance of the Daleks. I prefer the shock in Remembrance of the Daleks, so this kind of compromises that. And to be honest, it's just poorly done, really. And because the effect that would be there isn't really there, because it's just so badly done. Not just visually, but just there's no point in it story-wise. He wasn't kind of like floating up stairs or anything. He was just randomly floating there for no reason. So yeah, now that said, I'm gonna go and rate it probably 6 out of 10. I think is fair for this story. It's not the best, but there is some enjoyable aspects to it. So yeah, I think that'll do for today. Thanks for watching, everyone. Next week's review will either be Space Museum or Galaxy 4. I haven't decided yet. If you want to leave a comment down below saying which one I should do, then I'll appreciate it and I'll do that one. So yeah, thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you all next week. Bye, everyone.